Brought to you by the only major real estate project in the world accepting Bitcoin. Galt's Gulch, Chile, where you can live and let live, and thrive and let thrive.
Many of you may not know, but John, he has a nickname, Bitcoin Jesus. So I thought maybe I have the last presentation of the conference with a reference to the book of Revelation. There's a story about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is, I think, war, famine, religion, war, famine, and death. So in the last few years since the internet, the gentleman named Timothy May came up with the terminology, the four horsemen of apocalypse, which are the child pornographers, organized crime, terrorists, and pirates. And they use, this terminology is used a lot to scare people and to get people to regulate and over-regulate and to keep people from using the internet. It was at the early days. Now it's been used the same way with Bitcoin. So, you know, the press continuously talks about this type of stuff. We got over the Silk Road, but they keep talking about, you know, drug users and money laundering and so forth. So what I want to do is really talk about the good stuff, the stuff that really makes a difference, and the reason that I am passionate about Bitcoin. And I'm going to talk to you in this presentation about what I think is the reality of Bitcoin, which it can help reduce poverty. It can help create jobs. It could help improve healthcare, and I'll prove that with data, increase literacy, and enhance the quality of life. So these are the kind of stuff we should be talking about in the press and amongst ourselves. These are the lofty goals that we should be aspiring to. But let me first lay out the foundation about what's going on today. The current financial system is broken. Many of the world population are excluded. About 2.5 billion people are excluded from financial services. You know, some of that is because some of these third world countries, there's poor infrastructure, there's lack of education, there's some corruption, there are some fees that people can't afford to pay. For whatever reason, people are not being served properly by the current system. This is a map that shows you the exclusion of, you know, about more than half of the world population. Now, out of this, you know, this is about 53%. You can see in South America, you know, around 65%. It depends, of course, in different countries and so forth. But about 2.5 billion people around the world live in poverty. That's like less than $2 a day. That's how much we pay for a stick of gum or I don't know what else you can buy for $2. But there are people that live less than $2 a day in the world, and actually about a little over 1 billion of those people live less than $1.25 a day. So how do you serve those people, with financial services? But even people that are included, such as myself, I live in the US and I have access to financial services, but the choices are really bad. You know, I can wire funds and it's really expensive and it goes into a black hole and takes forever for the other people to get it. And I can use MoneyGram, Western Union and pay really high fees. Or I can use PayPal, credit cards, and they're also very expensive. There's chargeback, there's dispute, there's privacy concerns. So even us in the Western world don't have don't have a really good financial services system. But I think there's a use case that I'd like to talk about the most, which I think is most relevant to this crowd. I believe remittance is the best use case for Bitcoin. And I want to talk to you about why I believe that. First of all, the value of remittance around the world is about $549 billion. Some countries are charged up to 25% for fees for remittance. The poorer the countries, the higher the fees, which is why I think it's actually criminal. MoneyGram, Western Union charge average of 9%, and those poor countries, the dilemma is that up to 40% of the gross domestic product comes from remittance. So they are badly dependent on this remittance business. And also some of those countries tax remittances. So there is a disincentive for the governments there to reduce those fees. They're really taxing the lowest level of the population by taxing remittances. So we have a big challenge ahead of us. So let's look at the top 10 countries. This is from World Bank. The top 10 receiving countries in the world are India, China, Philippines, and number 4 is Mexico. So about $24 billion a year in remittance goes into Mexico. And that's a small percentage of their GDP. I think it's around maybe 1 or 2%. But in Latin America, Mexico is the largest country for remittance. I think here in Argentina, they do about $600 million in remittance. But that's coming in. There's also inter-country remittances that we'll get to. But I wanted you to get a sense of the scale of this remittance business. It's actually larger than official development assistance or private debt, almost catching up with all foreign direct investment. This is when companies and countries invest in different countries. So remittance is also growing very rapidly. But I don't know if you can read this. I apologize for the slide quality, but I wanted to show you this because it's very interesting. This is what you see up here is the cost to send money by different product type. And the second bar on the left is account to account other than your own bank. So if you have a bank account, you want to send money to another bank account, you're paying something like 15% on that. But then if you go a few more bars over, you see door to door, it's only 6%. How can it cost you more money to send money from one bank to another bank than it costs to deliver it door to door? There's something wrong with that picture, right? World Bank believes that if you reduce remittance fees by just 5%, you can save $16 billion a year for the poorest people in the world that are receiving them. So that's not a small chunk. In fact, we had about $74 billion in fees total around the world last year. And if you think about it, we are giving these third world countries about $133 billion in foreign aid that goes to the top of the country, and then maybe it gets trickled down to the bottom of the economy. We don't know. But we give them $133 billion, and then we take back $74 billion in fees from the bottom of the economy. This is not right. They can't afford that. These people need to have all the money they can have to survive and eat and grow their business and feed their family and extended families. So if we could just reduce or eliminate remittance fees, we could actually give less money foreign aid to those countries and instead put that money back into growing those economies. So there is an issue here, and I wanted to see what we can do to fix it. How do we fix this? I think the answer is innovation. And since we are here in the financial services industry, I want to talk to you about payment innovation that can help solve some of that problem. Let me first talk to you about the study that Visa did a couple of years ago in 56 countries. And they proved that by doing a small amount of financial innovation, payment innovation, they were able to increase the GDP, gross domestic product of those countries by almost $1 billion. And what was really interesting about that study was that they were able to create 1.9 million jobs just by doing this little bit of innovation in payments. And what's also very interesting is that the developing countries were able to get almost 3 times as much innovation and increase in GDP from that innovation. So the lesson learned here is that if you do a little bit of innovation in financial services or payments, you can get a very good result from developing countries in terms of increase in GDP. And so when you increase GDP, what can happen is that people make more money, they create more jobs, and when they make more money, they can buy access to clean water, and they can have improved healthcare and higher literacy rates. And I'll show you some of the studies that were done by World Bank. Here you see, on the bottom of the scale, you see the income per person, which represents GDP growth. And on the vertical axis, you see the improved in water source. And what this slide shows you is how increasing GDP can actually improve water sources. So let me go back. Oops, sorry. I think I needed a clicker here. What's that? Yeah, it's not moving. But anyway, do you have a clicker? Or somehow this is not happening. Ah, there you go. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, sorry. Okay, here we go. So this is really good show. I want you to see this. Basically, you can see from 1991 to the current date, the circle in red is China, and you see as the GDP grew, so did the quality of water source in China. And the other ones are Indonesia, South Africa, but it gives you an idea about how increasing GDP can actually impact the quality of water. Let me show you how it could also impact sanitation in those countries. Again, look at the circle here with China, and you see how it keeps going up as the GDP increases. It makes sense, right? Because you're making more money, you're able to buy clean water, you're able to do better sanitation, and basically have better quality of life. Here, you can also see increase in health spending as GDP grew. So everything is dependent on GDP. Once that goes up, once you got more money coming to the economy, people are spending more money on healthcare. One thing you notice here with the US in the yellow circle, that's with aberration. That's because the cost of healthcare has gone up quite a bit in the US. But in other countries, it was not because of cost of healthcare, it's because people actually had more money to spend to take care of themselves and their family. So the other thing that we notice is the cost of, as GDP goes up, people actually have more money, they can go back and finish school, and literacy rate goes up. So you can see the movement is all up and to the right as GDP is increasing. So this is just all public data from World Health and from World Bank, and it's all online, and you can see that data. So my point is, if innovations can lead to higher GDP, and if GDP can lead to higher quality of life for people, then we need to use innovation to improve the life of people around the world. And that's what Bitcoin can do. Bitcoin is decentralized, there is no banks, there is no inflation, there's no corruption built into this. It's truly universal. It's not just for rich people or investors or libertarian, it's for everybody. And it's also perfect for remittance because it's fast, it's cheap, and there's no intermediaries. So for the first time in the history of humanity, you can transfer wealth across the globe instantaneously without the use of a third-party intermediary. So it is perfect for remittance from that perspective. You can eventually see a world where Bitcoin can be used for transferring wealth from one phone to another phone. But that takes a while to do. It's not that easy. So I think this needs to be done in steps. People that are in sub-Saharan Africa or in India, in those poor third world countries, they don't have mobile phones, they don't have access to Bitcoins. So you have to do this in stages. So, let me tell you what M-Pesa did in Africa, and I think this is a good case study for us. In Kenya, there are about 19 million adults, and almost the whole adult population, 19 million adults that have cell phones. That's almost the whole population. Out of those 19 million, 15 million of them use M-Pesa, which is a mobile-to-mobile payment system. And a staggering third of the GDP of the country flows through M-Pesa, which is unbelievable. The reason they were successful is because they use an existing mobile infrastructure. They were fortunate they had a phone company that had already good mobile infrastructure in place. And then they had a lot of Kenyans that had moved to the West that sent their cell phones back home as gifts, and they got a lot of people to own cell phones. And they charged very little fees. They did a smart thing and charged very little fees, and they made sure that the system worked each and every time and was safe and secure. Well, this kind of defines Bitcoin. This is what we can deliver eventually. So I think what M-Pesa did for Kenya, Bitcoin can do for the world. And that's the model we could eventually aspire to. But let's do it in stages. And that's what my company, ZipZap, does. We are building cash-in solutions, and we are building cash-out solutions around the world. And then we would like to connect the two through Bitcoin. This is how you can do remittance, because people often ask me, how do you do remittance through Bitcoin? Well, you do it in stages. You build the cash-in, you build the cash-out. The customers never have to know they're using Bitcoin. All they're doing is going to a physical location, putting cash in, and their family is receiving cash on the other end through a physical location. Then slowly you can introduce the concept of a mobile phone or another device, internet, that can be used for initiating the money transfer. But the people on the other side is still going to be receiving cash. It's very hard to change that immediately. But in the long term, our aspiration and our goals are to be able to transfer money through mobile phones from one country to another around and at no cost. So that's what I'm aspiring to do. In conclusion, I know that you guys are waiting to hear Tatiana sing, and I don't want to hold you up too long. So let me just tell you that what we just talked about, which is innovation can lead to increase in GDP. Increase in GDP can lead to good things, increase in quality of life, and Bitcoin is that innovation that allows us to do that. I think this is the best use case for Bitcoin today. I think microtransactions and e-commerce is all good stuff, but this is something, a pain point that we can address today, and I hope that you can join us in getting this to the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alan, and I'm very happy we closed the conference with your presentation. As you know, human impact of Bitcoin will be huge. So, well, 2 questions for Alan, because before we go to Tatiana. Yes.
Hello. How do you deal in all these countries with the regulations? Because you're for them look like a money transmitter, so you maybe need to buy some licenses in all the countries you operate. So do you have problems with that, or because it's easy because you're selling Bitcoins and you sell like that?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. ZipZap does not have money transfer license. We are a platform that enables licensed money transfer companies to collect the cash and send it through Bitcoin through exchanges that have licenses in their own jurisdictions. So how we transfer the Bitcoin is from one exchange to another exchange through our partners. We've signed up some of the largest exchanges in the world as partners, and we provided Bitstamp initially, and we've partnered with TradeHill and Bitstamp and Kraken and a whole host of them coming up soon, CoinX and CamBX in the US. But bottom line is what I talked earlier in compliance group, that we need to change the world from within. We can't change it from outside. You can't break the law and try to change the law. So when you go to the court and stand in front of the judge, you can't say that, hey, but everybody else is doing it. Why you mean? We should just change the stupid law. You can't do that. You have to change it before you break the law. So what we decided to do very early on is to work with people that are licensed, companies that are licensed, that are operating legally, and use their network to get the cash from the customers. And we never touch the cash. We collect it from them and have them send directly to the exchanges. And those are also licensed partners. And then on the cash out, we're going to be doing the same thing in the coming weeks or months, where we have over 90 plus countries that we can do cash out through licensed money transfer companies.
Next question.
Hello. How are you gonna solve the problem of transferring Bitcoin and converting them in a country, let's say like Kenya, where people may not be interested at all in holding Bitcoin, and you will have a huge liquidity problem? Are you trying to solve that, or do you think your vision is more to just give people the opportunity to do that?
I want to solve that problem. So if you see on the top of the screen there, we already have built a cash network for cash-in, about 700,000 locations. It was just recently leaked to the press that we're also adding 28,000 locations in the UK and other. So UK, US, Canada, those are countries that all of remittances are initiated from. And then on the other end, I'm working with partners in Mexico, in India, in China for the cash out locations, and as well as Latin America. We just opened an office, an operation here in Latin America, in Argentina. Joaquin is in charge of that to grow. We're working with Panama and Colombia and Chile and Peru. So what we want to do is to build as many cash out locations as quickly as we can. And we're actually raising some money in Silicon Valley next year to help us grow that even more rapidly. But yeah, that's the idea, is for us to partner with anybody in this room that has access to payment centers or are themselves involved in a payment center. We would love to talk with you about that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering how you're getting, like, I don't know what the number in India was, like 76 billion. How are you getting that type of money into Bitcoins at first? I mean, it would be cool, but like...
Yeah, ultimately, if we do this right, the whole $560 billion, $549 billion in remittance should go through Bitcoin. There is no reason for it to go through the cash networks or through the MoneyGram or Western Union, but it's going to take a long time to get there. And I am the one that believes in disrupting my own businesses. So even though I have to charge fees now in order to start this, but at some point I would love to do this without charging fees. Just use Bitcoin to Bitcoin conversion through mobile phones.
One last question. Good.
¿Se me puede traducir? Sí. Más bien sería un comentario. En México el segundo ingreso después del petróleo son las remesas. Y yo creo que sería quien haga sería la killer application, en el caso de México específicamente, quien se dedique a hacer esto con Bitcoin. Entonces, pues, yo nada más estoy esperando regresar allá para platicarlo. Digo, ¿cuál?
Well, in Mexico, the second largest income after petroleum is the remittances. So you'll love to see, that going through Bitcoin. That's the expression.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Well, we're working with some of the partners in Mexico now to have, I think our first payment centers there, about 5,000 locations, should be done in first quarter. But we're working with other partners, about 11,000 locations, and then some new ones that we just met recently at this conference that could help us expand that. Yeah, I believe that's a big pain point, not just for Mexico, for all of Latin American regions, but especially for Mexico, it's a big problem. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alan.